Okay, so this is the, everyone can hear me? Because I can't see whether I'm on mute.
Yes, and the screen is visible.
Okay, great. All right, so what I'm going to be talking about today is the second block of lifespan development. And this is unit 1. It's called physical development. So this only focuses on, until now, we did early childhood where the pre-primary age from 0 to 6 was covered. And there they talked about all development in one unit, almost like cognitive and psychosocial and emotional and physical, everything. But here they've dealt with this physical only in one unit. But there's only been one question so far in exams from this unit, which is very strange. It's a very long unit, actually. It's mostly long because of repetition. There is so much repetition in this content. The same stuff is repeated in so many different sections. So I've tried to bring it all together, and I've reorganized if you look at the notes, motor development comes in 3 different subsections. So I've kind of put it all together into 2-3 slides. So it's a little differently organized from our notes, but all the content is there and kind of summarized. So, but this entire unit focuses only on physical development. So I just want to make it clear and so everyone gets an overview before we start. Okay, so yeah, okay. So this is just a general overview of all areas of development. That's how the introduction starts with our notes. So this age is also called the early school years from 6 to 12. It's also called middle school years or elementary school years. One second. Okay, so it's also called middle childhood or elementary school age. This in different studies, it's been given different names. So our notes say it's a very slow and steady and uniform physical growth that happens in this phase, because the phases before this, which is the prenatal, and then the from 0 to 6 phase, I mean, and after this, that's adolescence, that comes after 12. All these are much more rapid development. You'll see rapid cognitive development, there's especially the phases that come before this, the weight triples and doubles and things like that. So there's a large rapid growth, even cognition and other areas also develop rapidly. Here it becomes it's one of the more slower paced developmental phases at 6 to 12. Then here motor skills that were acquired earlier are perfected on and worked on and improved on. So it's more the skills have already been acquired, but here they're perfected. For example, walking, jumping, which were learned in the phase before this, improve and get better, get enhanced. Then there's also a mention here of the cognitive and social skills, which also grow very rapidly in this phase. But motor skills is what is focused on only in this unit. Now, our notes call this the smart age, where they say the child thinks he knows everything and also feels like he feels that he needs to inform all the others of his or her superior knowledge. I find that this would apply to almost all ages, maybe from 6 onwards. Before this, I don't think so, but from 6 up till adolescence, and I think even some adults also still think they know everything and also feel like they need to inform everybody. So I think of their superior knowledge. I think this is also a little biased, but it's there in our notes, so I just put it there. They call it the smart age, and it's also called the gang age, apparently, in some research papers. They say because it's where they feel that they need to be accepted as a member of a gang or a clique. There are certain social expectations they put on themselves, as well as they feel that their peers put on them. And for them to be accepted by their peers starts to become important to them in this age. And they need to master certain developmental tasks so that they're accepted by their peer group, even simple things. And you can see this in this age when if they start to fall behind in certain physical developmental, for example, they're playing with their peers and they're not able to climb the jungle gym for a certain reason. And it starts to affect them psychologically as well. And for them to feel like they belong to a group, they need to be able to perform these tasks. But I feel that this applies to other ages as well. I think adolescent as well feel that they need to be accepted in a group. I mean, even adults, it's the same thing. But I think this is what they're trying to say here is it's the first age where it actually starts to matter. I mean, before this, they're not that involved in group play and social play. They do play with children in a group, but they're not that particular about belonging. I feel they do have it. I do see it even in my daughter who's now just turned 6. She did feel like she wasn't getting along when she shifted schools, but it's not as pronounced as I can see it starting to develop in this age. So I think that's what they're trying to convey, that it becomes more important to them, social acceptance by their peers. Then other important fundamental skills like reading, writing, calculating, and social skills start to develop. And it's important to know that if there is any failure to develop certain tasks, I'm talking only about physical in this case, it leads to, I mean, of course, psychological as well. It will lead to poor self-esteem, poor social adjustment, and that can lead to issues in the future as well in subsequent years. Okay, so here there is a small paragraph where they say something about growth and development, but I have put one entire slide on it because it was mentioned in the previous unit as well, where it was talking about the 0 to 6 years. And even there they mentioned growth versus development. And I think it's important for us to understand that there is a difference between when we look at our notes, because this entire subject, lifespan development, is all about growth and development. So I thought we should give this a little attention because there is a difference in growth and development. When they say growth, they mean the definition, loose definition would be a physical or bodily change which leads to an increase in size. But as compared to development means an increase in the complexity of a function or a skill that the individual can perform. Another definition is also the capacity or skill that the individual is trying to perform is developed so that that individual can adapt to his environment. So development happens by an individual needing to adapt to an environment. So it's different. Growth is kind of a physical bodily change, and sometimes it is not something that they have always got control over, but development is a capacity that they need to develop, they have to work on, and it helps them adapt to their environment. And when they say complexity of skill and function, they mean that, just hold on 1 second. Anaya, please, not now, on the group presentation. Can you put a dial? Please. I don't know. Sorry. So increase in complexity of function and skill. The example they give here is picking up of a pencil. So they're saying if you see a 3-year-old trying to pick up a pencil, they'll probably use their whole hand, their entire palm to pick up the pencil. Then if you go to like 5 or a 6-year-old, they might use maybe their fingers or just 3 fingers. But when you go to 11-year-old, they have, they can do something like this. Apart from, they can hold it between their fingers, they can, twirl it in their fingers. They have much more the same skill. They have the function and complexity of that skill has improved. Even walking and jumping, you will see that their skill improves in these areas as well. Then growth. Again, with growth, how do you measure it? It can be measured quantitatively, and development can be measured both quantitatively and qualitatively. An example of here growth is representation of physical attributes. It says growth can be seen through physical attributes, but development is a behavioral. Development is a behavioral aspect of growth. So when you say development, you don't actually physically always see it. It's sometimes because of behavior, development happens. Okay. Now, growth changes. Growth examples of growth is changes in height, weight, and dentition, which is the changes in development of teeth. It's the structure and the kind of teeth each individual has, and each species also has. That's what dentition is. And then development changes in development would be intelligence, creativity, language acquisition, and also certain non-verbal skills that they develop. So another definition which I thought was interesting was and this is quite important also because it results in development results from an interaction between maturation, which is and something that the individual can't exactly control, right? That is in their genetics. Maturation is a hereditary thing, and it is to a certain degree influenced by nutrition and certain environmental factors, because you can reach your maturation potential based on how well, what kind of nutrition you're getting. But maturation largely is dependent on hereditary factors, and then learning. But learning is not based on learning is based on a skill that needs to be developed and acquired. So it's an interaction of both maturation and learning. So that's why development is different from growth. So because growth, kind of height, weight changes just happen naturally, but development requires an effort on the part of the individual, and that's why there is very clear difference between growth and development. So that's why I gave an entire slide to this, because I thought it was important to know. Okay, so now these are just general facts on physical growth from 6 to 12. So they're saying by the time they reach this age, school age, 90% of the adult brain weight is already achieved by the child. Just a little bit more development has to happen. And it happens right till adolescence and into the age of 20. Now, as you can see, the lobes here, the parietal lobe is this one, and the temporal lobe, these two lobes apparently develop the fastest. I feel this comes under cognitive to a certain degree, but also physical, because of the fact that neurons have to be formed. So temporal and parietal lobes develop the fastest in this age, and that leads to better hand-eye coordination, better physical gross motor skills. Now their strength capabilities also double in this age. Their body becomes more proportionate. There were some notes here on body proportion that I wanted to mention, because I haven't made a note of it. Just give me a second. Yeah, so body proportions, how does the body become more proportionate? Because the head is a little larger until this age. Then when they're very young, infancy and all that, definitely you can see there's a larger head compared to in proportion to the body. That does go on till the age of 6, and after this, that they start to become more proportional. The head starts to get a little smaller as comparison to the body, and it gets into the right proportions. Then their trunk also elongates and it becomes a little slimmer. That means our torso becomes slimmer, the chest broadens and flattens, and the neck also becomes a little longer. So this is how the body starts to change. Then, yeah, the right brain, there's a growth spurt in the right hemisphere, the right brain. This improves cognition. Now, this is cognition, and I think it wouldn't come under physical, but it was mentioned in our notes. There's a lot of overlap. There's a mention of cognition, and there's emotional development, and there's also a lot of mention of hitting puberty, which isn't even in this section. But so I've not covered some of it. I've kind of left it out, but I've made a mention of it. So because there was so much focus on cognitive functions that did develop, so I just put it in there. They're saying cognitive functions. Now, if those who attended Mala Martina's career counseling session, she talks about right brain development. Now, what is right brain? I've made a note here. So right brain is the artistic side of the brain, where non-verbal skills are formed. And one second, yeah. So imagination and empathy and original thinking and creativity and arts and all that, visualization, all that stuff happens in the right hemisphere. That starts to improve. So that leads to, when that happens, all these other aspects, all these, where is this? Yeah, all this also starts to develop. So spatial orientation, that means, how do I explain that? What architects need to do, seeing things from different angles and different orientations. Sequencing of objects becomes easier. Time perception, as of now, you can see 6-year-olds do struggle a little bit with understanding time, but it gets better. Music appreciation, non-verbal communication, which is body language, cues and things, and emotions like empathy, humor, they start to develop as the right brain hemisphere grows. Then there was a mention of puberty, but I am going to only talk about the early onset in girls, because boys it develops much later. Even though they've mentioned puberty in boys, it doesn't come under this age. It will happen after 12th. girls with onset of puberty, some of them, and it's happening more so now, as children are maturing earlier, they're saying some of the earliest onset is around 8 years, and they say menarche, I think it's pronounced menarche. It is the first onset of the first menstruation that happens, and such sometimes little early, like 8, 9 secondary sexual characteristics also start to develop. There's breast enlarge and pubic hair and underarm hair, all those things develop. But I feel this shouldn't be in the section. I mean, it does happen, it starts, but it's still relatively rare. I think between 8 and 10, sometimes girls do mature. So there, I am mentioning it here. Boys, though, they mention maturation, but I think it should come later, not in this section. And there's a big, and maturation, there's a big age range, like we said, with girls and of course boys also, but girls, because between 8 and anywhere between 12, it can happen. So it's a very large range that happens in these sections, secondary sexual characteristics develop. Yeah, there was also mention of gastrointestinal tract also matures in school years. They have fewer stomach upset, their blood sugar starts to stabilize. The lungs also grow because they still, actually the only condition that they really have is asthma. Usually sicknesses and illnesses also start to go down in this age. Before this age, they're more prone to respiratory illnesses, but here it starts to get better. Their lung capacity increases, their respiratory rate, which is the number of breaths they take per minute, it also starts to decrease and slow down. So that's a good thing, but they're still at this is what they're most prone to is lung respiratory issues, even in this age. But they're becoming tougher and stronger, and the immunity improves in this age. And bowel and bladder control, of course, is by the time they're 6 and beyond, it starts to become very well established unless they have certain developmental issues. Hearing improves. It's already pretty good by the time they're 6, but it improves. Hand-eye coordination improves. The action time improves. Children, this is one thing that I want to mention. They're much taller than the previous generations, and they mature much earlier. If anyone could shed some light on why that is, it would be good. We can either discuss it after class, or if you'd like to contribute now also why you think that this is happening. They're saying it's hormones and the food and the milk that we eat that might be causing them to mature earlier. But if anyone has any other things they want to share, you can share now also. Or after class is okay. I can't see any. Can you see what's on the top? It says factors that affect the physical growth and development. Factors that are influencing physical growth and development. Here in our notes, it's mentioned as 6 factors. Let me just find our notes here. Yeah, okay. So in our notes, it's mentioned as 6 factors. I thought I'd put in a Venn diagram because it kind of explains it more. Because I found that some of the factors overlap. So here they've said, now we're talking about how only physical growth. Earlier, there was a mention of all the other, the emotional and cognitive development, but now I'm going to focus only on physical because this unit is about that. So now physical growth and development is affected by these 7 factors. Yeah. 7 factors mentioned here. And environmental factors, let's talk about those first. Height and weight is affected by nutrition. Of course, that we already know that well-nourished children are taller, they reach puberty sooner, and poor nourishment in puberty prevents children from reaching their hereditary potential. So even though in their genes, they might have the potential to get this tall or reach puberty this age, it might be delayed, or they might not get to that height because of poor nutrition. And that is an environmental factor. Then you have emotional disturbances. They're saying that persistent emotional disturbances, that not random ones, but consistency, if they're put through physical or emotional abuse. Then there's an overproduction of adrenal steroids by the adrenal cortex, and the steroid, I think, is cortisol. That is the one that is produced by the adrenal cortex, and that is a stress hormone. And the brain being constantly exposed to that stress hormone, it inhibits the pituitary gland, which is at the base of our spine, that at the base of our brain, that pituitary gland produces the growth hormone. So that growth hormone's production is inhibited by an increase in cortisol and other adrenal cortex hormones. And this happens because of constant emotional disturbances. And that causes a delay in growth or stunting in growth. which I found out now. I didn't know this was such a, I didn't know to what degree, I don't know to what degree it has a large influence, it has a limited influence. Maybe Dr. Anju can tell us if she's here, to what degree this can affect children, but it's quite interesting to know this. So this prevents children from reaching the height that they would genetically have, possibly the potential, the hereditary potential that was there for them to reach that height. If they don't reach that height, then socioeconomic status, of course, that is low income social people with the low socioeconomic status children, they tend to be smaller in height, and then better socioeconomic status, that goes down to environment, comes down to the environment, as mentioned before. Then now we'll talk about the hereditary factors. Of course, the sex. Girls at this stage are slightly taller and slightly heavier than boys, even though the stats that are given in our notes, which we'll come across later, do not say the same thing. But everywhere else in the text, it says that girls are a little taller. The notes say, but the numbers don't add up for some reason in our notes. I put down the numbers that we have in our notes, but I also feel that girls, I see this until the age of, say, I mean, once boys hit puberty, they shoot up. But I think till then, girls and boys are pretty much at par with height. Girls tend to be a little taller than boys, and they're also, it says here, slightly heavier than boys, and between 6 and 12. And there's a difference this differences increase when girls begin their puberty growth spurt. Okay, I don't think that's important, but the sex makes a difference to their physical growth and development. Then endocrine function. What is endocrine function? Yes. Okay. So they're saying the endocrine function results in normal size. That is the growth hormone. Again, the same pituitary gland, which produces endocrine hormones, the growth hormone. So that, again, if there is an overproduction, then the person develops gigantism, which is the too tall or underproduction. This is again hereditary, I feel, but also could be influenced by environment. But I still put in hereditary because I feel hereditary. This please correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel that hereditary factors have a much larger influence on endocrine function, that is the growth hormone production, than the environmental factors would have. Does anyone have any questions? Because I've just been going on and on. I hope everyone's getting me, and please stop me if you have any doubts.
Yeah, you don't understand.
Okay.
Going fine, thank you.
Great. Okay, then health and personality. Here there's an overlap. Health is, everyone knows that children in good health who suffer only infrequent minor illnesses will be taller than other children. And health, that therefore depends on both whether environmental factors and hereditary factors, because it could also be some genetic issues that they have that lead to poor health. And then personality. Now, personality, I wanted to mention here, even though it's not mentioned in our notes here, but if you go to page 14 of our notes, if you have them with you, page 14 of our notes says that they say that personality, the temperament of the child, and affect his energy levels, whether he is this personality, whether he is venturesome is the word here, whether he's adventurous, whether he's aggressive, exploratory by nature, whether he wants to participate in group functions. All these things affect his physical development, because children who don't want to participate in physical activities have the energy but choose to not actively participate. All these things affect their physical development. So I thought we should put this in, that their personality depends on the environment, what kind of home environment they have, what their peer environment is like, what their schooling is in like, and also their hereditary nature, what their personality is that they come with. And they say also sometimes children have low self-esteem, shy children, they find it difficult to compete with other children, so they don't participate in a lot of activities, and this leads to poor physical development. So that's why I put personality here, even though it's not mentioned in our notes in the list, but I think it's important that it's there. Okay, so this I'll just skim over quickly. Areas of growth.
Malvi, 1 second. Previous slide, I think I missed out the emotional abnormalities, the emotional disturbances.
Emotional disturbances.
Can you say that again, please?
Yeah, so they're saying here that emotional disturbances, which are environmental factors, influence the physical development, because emotional disturbances cause stress. It could be emotional abuse. It could even be physical abuse, which would cause stress in the child, an increase in the production of cortisol, which is a stress hormone. That affects the production of the growth hormone. It directly affects the pituitary gland's production of growth hormone. So high levels of stress that a child has to go through is what they mean by emotional disturbances. That leads to the child being stunted, not growing to their genetic potential.
So you mean the stress associated with the abuse?
Here in the notes, they mentioned emotional abuse, and it has to be repetitive. I mean, all children go through a little bit of stress, without doubt. Like when they go to school and let's say they're going to first standard, it's a new school, it's a big school, they don't have any friends. It would be a little stressful, or teacher scores them in class, let's say. Between 6 and 12, anytime that happens, or that will happen, but they're talking about repeated emotional abuse, emotional stress that could lead to this. The brain kind of gets chemically wired to gets used to that level of cortisol, and then it becomes hard for them to produce growth hormone, is what it says. Is that clear? Was that clear?
Yeah, thank you. Got it.
Okay.
Yes, got it.
Okay, so I'm going to skim over these areas of growth because they're divided into about 5 areas. Height, they're saying there's an increase between the ages of 6 to 11. There's an increase in about 5 to 6 centimeters. They grow annually. Girls and boys both. It's pretty much similar on this age. Between the ages of 6 and 11, the average child will grow about 2 to 2.5 inches. That's the average growth between that age range. An average 6-year-old will be about 3.5 feet tall, and an average 12-year-old is about 5 feet tall, to give you an idea of the growth. I don't know if these numbers add up, but this is what's come directly from our notes. Now, the weight. Between the ages of 6 to 12, the average child will gain about 3 to 6 pounds is what's mentioned. That's about 1.5 to 2.5 kgs. They'll grow, their weight will go up. That seems a little low to me, but that's what's mentioned in the notes. Now, average 6-year-old weighs about 18 kgs, and an average 12-year-old weighs about 36. That seems like a large difference between the two, but I guess that's the facts. So height, weight, teeth. Now, the first teeth, that's dentition. That's what is meant by, it's the kind of teeth in the mouth and the structure and the way that I'm sure doctor would be able to tell us. So the first teeth that fall happen around 6 years of age. They're saying toothless smiles are pretty common between this age, between 6 and 12. Transition from milk to permanent teeth is usually completed by around 12 years of age. After the permanent teeth start to come in, there's a change in facial structure. And except for the second and third molar, all teeth come in. And middle school children, they're saying have 28 teeth. But because they haven't got their second and third molar, they don't have as many adult teeth, which are 32 teeth. They don't even have wisdom teeth yet. So then bones. Middle school children, all their bones are formed, and what's happening is they continue to get stronger because they get sufficient calcium. They mentioned sufficient calcium because I think they're comparing to the adulthood where you need to supplement with calcium. Here they're saying the sufficient calcium makes the bone stronger. This leads to higher activity levels because their bones are stronger, and bones are anchors for muscles. So that's why they find that they're more active in this age because they're feeling stronger as well, and their bones continue to grow in size and strength. Muscles, they're saying body fat accounts for about 15% of the average school child's body weight. Right now, body fat is about 15% of the average school child's body weight. Girls have more fat than boys genetically around their bones. This happens, I think, so that in the future they are genetically designed to bear children, so they need to have more fat. So that is why this happens. And as they mature, boys develop, say they're saying around 6, 7, girls start to gain more fat than muscles in their arms, legs, and and their trunk. Whereas boys start to gain more muscle than fat. That ratio starts to change, and therefore they're able to run more, jump they become a little stronger and they can jump higher distances, run longer distances is what it says. And that is unfortunately a fact. So disorder in physical development. Now they mentioned disorders and they've been very, very vague and broad about it. They just said hyperactive and hypoactive. They say now the reasons for these disorders are physical illnesses, repeated physical illness. If a child keeps falling sick, they start to fall behind in class. They miss out on their classes. Physical illness also, they fall behind. Let's say they're in a sport, group sport, let's say football or tennis, and they keep falling sick. They can't go back to it when they come back. The peers have gotten ahead of them because this phase is quite rapid. Development is happening. So they do fall behind, and then falls and injuries and accidents can lead to damage in the brain as well, or broken bones and things like that. So these kind of injuries again are detrimental to their development, physical development we're focusing on. Of course, falls and injuries can lead to cognitive development, which will, they're saying some of these disorders are genetic and some are acquired, such as these falls and injuries. Broadly divided into hyperactive and hypoactive in our notes. Hyperactive is mentioned as attention deficit. My opinion was it was a little biased in our notes. Only negative attributes, and also there was a shade of negativity I felt in the way it was explained, but I'll just put down what was there with 1 second. Just give me 1 second. I'll just look at these notes and just see what they mentioned. Yeah, so hyperactivity, they're saying that they're easily distracted, they're impulsive, children who are hyperactive and who possibly have ADD. Now I know that Seema and who else? Somebody else took a class in learning this on LD children with yeah, I think it's Mridula. And then there was also children with ADD, and also I think gifted children that Seema had taken a class in gifted children. So I think if they're in the class, they can shed a little bit more light on these disorders. Maybe after the session is, after I'm done with this. So what they just said that they're very distracted, impulsive, irritable, moody, they're slow in learning, and they're inattentive, and they cannot do sequential tasks, and they're very easily distracted by sounds, and their behavior is very chaotic, and they don't remember what is told to them. They can't retain instructions. I'm sure all these things are true. But I think maybe a little bit other positive attributes also that could have been mentioned. And they're also very, they're saying that they're unpopular among their peers. These are some of the hyperactive disorders. Hypoactive is when they're less active than normal. So these children seem to have, they seem like they're daydreaming. They are quiet. They're very compliant, and they're good and they're compliant in their behavior. So that their condition might even go unnoticed for many years, and they're quite undistracting in their behavior. So that's why they go unnoticed. This condition can be quite can go undetected for a long time. These are two disorders that are mentioned in physical development in this age. Okay, so now this is where the question has been asked in our exams on this, in motor development. So I'll go over this quickly also. There's nothing really complex in this unit. It's no high funda concepts that need to be understood. It's very straightforward facts, which are kind of common sense to us. So motor development, body has two types of muscles: large muscles like arms, legs, and back, and fine or smaller muscles, which are in our fingers and toes. Muscular activity, we all know, is because of the contraction and flexing or the relaxing of muscles. That's how muscular activity happens, and that's how motor development also happens, based on how this muscular activity is coordinated by the child. Some part of muscular control is automatic, and some part is learned. A definition of, this is an interesting definition, I thought, that definition of muscular movement is due to muscular control, which is learned, and muscular control which is learned is called muscular coordination. Now, some of it is automatic, but what is muscular coordination? It is muscular movement that we have taught ourselves. Okay, so it's important to know that there's a difference between certain, like it has to be worked on. It is a skill that has to be acquired. So it's not, muscular coordination doesn't come automatically. Then there are certain sensitive periods which are important, because sensitive period is a time when a specific activity, when it can only be learned effectively and efficiently in that time period. And it's important to, it even happens with the cognitive activities, but for example, learning speech, there is a sensitive period for learning speech. It happens similarly with physical development. There are sensitive periods to learning how to write, sensitive periods to learning how to walk. And if the child doesn't work on those skills in that age, it can be lost. That ability will never be learned as efficiently, is what um, is what is is what is mentioned in our notes. And also um, it's it's also the best time. It's not just about not learning efficiently, it's also that it after that it needs to be practiced as well, post the sensitive period. And then that's why they say do not push a child to do an activity before their muscles are ready, like forcing a child to write before the age of 5, or forcing them to walk before their muscles are ready to handle it, because they haven't entered that sensitive period for learning that particular motor skill or cognitive skill, whatever it is. Okay, so now this is important, that they've divided muscular coordination, which is again the learned muscular movement. Muscular coordination is divided into gross motor skills and fine motor skills. We already know this. Gross motor skills, they're already developing from 0 to 6, like walking, jumping, running. It's just getting perfected or improved upon in this age. It involves large muscles, activities like running, skipping, balancing, kicking. We already know that, and it's learned first before fine motor skills. That's why children learn how to feed themselves, first learn how to jump, run, walk, before they learn the fine motor skills of feeding themselves and writing and other things. So gross motor skills come first. The fine motor skills, of course, involve smaller muscles, and it involves activities like writing, stitching, painting, playing an instrument, and things like that. It's learned second. And there's a mention here of why childhood is the ideal age for learning motor skills. Why don't we pick it up a little later in adolescence? Because at this time, the bodies are more pliable, easier to learning, fewer learnings, fewer previously learned skills. Sometimes previous knowledge can be a hindrance to learning new concepts. Here, there's no conflict of information, so they pick up skills like a sponge and more easily. They're more adventurous in this age, so they experiment, like you'll see kids of this age walking on a log or walking on a narrow ledge or something, because they've already developed the skill of walking or balancing, but they're working on improving on it in this age. Children enjoy repetition, unlike adolescents and adults. So muscle patterns can be formed, and that's why this is the best age, because they enjoy that repetition. Then they have fewer duties, less responsibilities, so they have time for mastery of these physical motor skills like writing and stitching and painting, and also those are fine motor skills, and other things like kicking and running and jumping. They have more time to master those skills. And that's it, I'm done. And questions in the exam. Huge unit. There's a lot of information in this unit, not huge like with the kind of information, but huge with the amount of facts in it. But I've kind of condensed them. There's a lot more in the notes, so you can go through them if you want even more information, but I don't think it's needed. The questions in the exam has just been one question from this entire unit: explain motor development in early childhood, which is in the last 3 slides that I've mentioned. And it came for 250 marks, so not a very large question, and it's come about 2 times, the same question.
Madhavi, can we go through those 3 slides once more?
Yeah, sure. This is it, motor development. That it involves gross motor skills and fine motor skills, an explanation of the 2 kinds of motor skills. And this is just a general overview that there are sensitive periods, that muscular coordination happens through learning of a particular movement. Motor skills, gross motor skills are learned first, then fine motor skills. Muscles are involved in muscles are involved in motor development. So contraction and flexing of the muscles is important. Large muscles result in large muscular motions, and fine and small muscles result in fine muscular movement. Then sensitive periods I already mentioned. What else? I think that's it. And you can also mention some of the information if you want motor development. You can even mention from here, hand-eye coordination, reaction time. I think that's about it. Hand-eye coordination, reaction time. What else would come under motor skills? So this is a fine motor skill, this image of a child learning how to tie a shoelace. I think that's about it.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.